There's this persistent dream in the tech world that just won't go away.
Mm.
It's the dream of the personal assistant. And I don't mean the kind that sets a timer for your pasta or, tells you it's raining outside when you can just look out the window.
Right, not a glorified clock.
No, I mean a real digital extension of yourself, a second brain.
Someone or something that actually knows what you're working on,
Mm.
understands your context, and doesn't just recite Wikipedia at you.
Exactly. But there has always been this massive catch.
Always.
To get that level of smarts, you usually have to hand over the keys to the kingdom. Your data, your personal prompts, basically your digital soul, all gets piped to a stranger's server farm in the cloud.
Which brings in all the privacy issues, the subscription costs, and just that uneasy feeling of being watched by a corporate algorithm.
Precisely. But today, we're looking at a guide that just flips that whole model on its head. We're exploring how to build an assistant that lives entirely on your own machine. It's about privacy, cost control, and honestly, just the satisfaction of owning your own infrastructure.
It is a major shift in thinking. We're analyzing a source titled Clawdbot Install, a busy engineer's guide to gateway, dashboard, and a local ollama model.
And I have to say, I love the attitude of this author. The guide straight up says it's opinionated and respects your time.
Yeah, no messing around.
It's written for people who, and I love this quote, want to ship code rather than cosplay as a DevOps team.
That is such a sharp distinction, isn't it?
It's perfect.
It implies we aren't here to fiddle with configurations for a week just to feel smart. We're here to get a result. We want a tool that works, not a science project that never ends.
So that is our mission today. We're going to walk through this guide, heading by heading, from the high-level architecture all the way down to the specific commands. We're going to build a local large language model stack that actually works.
Think of it as a blueprint analysis. We're going to see how all the pieces fit together to build a functioning, secure assistant.
Let's start with the big picture, then. The author calls this tool, Clawdbot, plumbing, which frankly doesn't sound very sexy. You don't usually see advanced plumbing on a resume.
It's not sexy, no, but
Right.
plumbing is what makes a house livable. You don't notice it until it breaks. The source explains that the sexy part is the AI, the large language model itself. But the critical part, the thing that makes it actually work as an always-on tool, is the gateway.
So help me visualize the stack here. If I'm sitting at my computer, what am I actually installing?
Okay, so the guide breaks it down into 4 distinct components. First, and most importantly, you have the gateway.
Gateway.
This is your control plane. It uses WebSockets, which is just a fancy way of saying a persistent connection, to coordinate everything. It handles your sessions, your tools, and keeping the state of the conversation.
So if the AI is the brain, the gateway is what? The nervous system?
That's a great analogy. It's the brainstem. It stays alive and keeps the lights on so the rest doesn't have to constantly reboot.
Okay.
Then, to actually see what's going on, you have the dashboard.
Which is just a website running on my own computer, right?
Exactly. It runs on port 189789. It gives you logs, visibility, a place to chat. Then you have the CLI, the command line interface
For debugging.
for debugging and automation.
Mhm.
And finally, the heavy hitter, the local model.
Which in this case is Ollama.
Correct. Ollama runs locally, maybe on your GPU if you have a gaming rig, or just your CPU if you're on a laptop. The key is that the prompts never leave the box.
I think it's worth noting here because listeners always ask this, do I need a NASA supercomputer for this?
Right.
The guide mentions this works on a home PC, a cheap VPS, or even an old laptop.
It's just a matter of trade-offs. If you run this on a cheap cloud server, you might not get blazing fast tokens per second. The text might generate a bit slower, but the capability, it's the same. You don't need a $10,000 rig to get started.
Okay, so that's the what. Now, before we type a single command, the guide forces us to stop at a prerequisites checklist. The author claims this avoids, what, 80% of failures?
And honestly, looking at these checks, they are exactly the kind of boring details that people skip and then regret 3 hours later.
What's the biggest hurdle?
The runtime. The guide is incredibly specific. You need Node 22 or higher.
Node 22. That seems
Yeah.
very cutting edge. I feel like most people still have Node 18 installed. That's the standard long-term support version, isn't it?
It is the standard for, enterprise web apps, sure, but the source explicitly warns against it here.
Why the push for 22?
This AI stack, it just moves too fast. The libraries, the dependencies, they're all bleeding edge. If you try to run this on close enough versions like Node 18, you're just going to end up in dependency hell.
Right.
The guide puts it bluntly, Do not fight this requirement unless you like error messages.
Good to know. Don't be a hero, just upgrade Node. What about ports? You mentioned 18789 earlier.
Right. You need to make sure nothing else is squatting on that port. The guide suggests running commands like ssltnp or lsoft to check.
Translate that for me.
It's basically checking if the plug socket is free before you try to plug in the fridge.
Huh.
It sounds basic, but if you have some other service hugging that port, the installation will fail and the error messages won't always tell you why.
So run node-av, run curl, make sure your environment is clean. The guide calls this removing boring uncertainty.
I like that philosophy. Eliminate the boring problems so you can focus on the interesting ones.
Okay, let's assume our machine is ready. We move to the installation and we immediately hit a fork in the road. There are two official paths.
We do have a choice here. Option A is the installer script. You know the type curl pipe to bash?
The I feel lucky button?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The guide describes this as the fastest route. It's best if you're spinning up a fresh Ubuntu virtual machine and you just want a working CLI right now.
And option B?
Global npm install.
Mm.
npm install-g Clawdbot at latest. This is for the people who want more transparency. If you want npm to own the lifecycle and you want to know exactly where the binaries are landing, you take this path.
Is there a wrong answer here? Should I avoid the script?
Not necessarily, but the guide emphasizes that you need to pick one and commit to it. The mistake is mixing them. You don't want to install via the script and then try to update via npm. That's how you get mismatched binaries and weird path errors.
Got it. Pick a lane and stay in it.
Okay.
So we've installed the CLI. The software is on the machine. Now, the guide says we need to run onboarding the right way. This involves a wizard.
Yes, and this is a crucial step that turns this from a toy into a real tool. The command is Clawdbot onboard install-daemon.
Why is that flag installed daemon so important? I feel like daemon is one of those words that sounds a bit scary to non-Linux people.
It does sound a bit medieval, doesn't it? But it just means a background service. Without the daemon, you have to open a terminal window, type a command to start the server, and leave that window open forever.
Right.
If you close the window or reboot the computer, your assistant dies.
Which is pretty annoying if you actually want to use it.
The daemon, it becomes an appliance.
Right.
Like your refrigerator. It's just on, it runs in the background, it starts up when you reboot your computer. You don't have to babysit it.
That makes a huge difference if you want this to be a daily driver. So we've onboarded, the daemon is running. How do we know if we actually succeeded?
Verification. You run Clawdbot gateway status or Clawdbot health. The guide says the goal here is boring output.
Boring is beautiful in DevOps.
It really is. You want it to say running or healthy. You do not want angry stack traces scrolling down your screen. Once that's green, you open your browser to http://127.0.1.18789.
Now, there is a massive red warning flag in the guide here for people running this on a VPS or a remote server.
Yes. Listen carefully to this part. If you are on a remote box, do not just open port 18789 to the entire internet just to see the dashboard.
Why not? I mean, it's password protected, isn't it?
It usually has some auth, sure. But exposing your control plane, the thing that controls your AI and potentially your system to the open web, is just asking for trouble.
Okay, so what's the safe way?
The guide insists. Use an SSH tunnel. Use a tailnet like Tailscale. Verify it locally first. Don't let the whole world knock on your front door.
Smart advice. Okay, so let's say we open that dashboard. We did everything right. But instead of a cool UI, we get a big red error. Clawdbot dashboard 1008 unauthorized.
This is apparently common enough that the author dedicated a whole section to it. It looks scary, like a permission failure or a server crash.
What actually causes it? Did we break it?
Usually no. It's often just a token mismatch. Maybe you updated the CLI, but not the gateway. Or more likely you're using a URL from an old session that has a stale token.
Ah, like trying to enter a concert with yesterday's ticket.
Exactly.
And the fix. Do we have to reinstall everything?
No, and the guide is adamant about that. Don't panic. Treat it as a sync issue. You just go to your terminal and run Clawdbot dashboard.
Oh, that's it?
That's it. It will generate a fresh tokenized link. You click that, and you're back in.
So stop losing your weekend debugging a simple auth sync. Just refresh the ticket. Okay, at this point, we have the plumbing, we have the dashboard, the lights are on. But nobody's home. We don't have a brain yet.
Right. We need the intelligence. This brings us to the integration phase. We need to install Ollama and pull a local model.
We mentioned Ollama earlier. This is the engine that runs the AI models.
Yes. And the guide specifically recommends pulling the GLM 4.7 Flash model.
Why that specific one? Why not Llama 3 or DeepSeek or one of the other big names?
It's likely a balance of speed and capability. For a personal assistant that needs to feel responsive, hence the Flash name, you want something that answers quickly but is still smart enough to handle commands. The command is ollama-local GLM 4.7 Flash.
And I assume this is the part where we go get a coffee.
Depending on your internet speed, yes, you're downloading gigabytes of data. This is really the only part of the process that depends on your bandwidth.
So we have Ollama running, we have the model downloaded, but Clawdbot doesn't necessarily know about it yet, does it?
No, and this is where it gets a little weird. The author calls this the opt-in that confuses everyone.
What's the confusion?
Clawdbot requires an API key to discover the Ollama provider.
But wait, Ollama's local. It runs on my machine. It doesn't use API keys. That's the whole point.
That's the confusion. Ollama doesn't need a key, but Clawdbot's internal configuration logic requires a non-empty value to enable a provider.
You're kidding.
If the value is empty, it assumes the provider is disabled.
That is delightfully bureaucratic code logic. It's like needing a stamped form to say you don't need a form.
It is what it is. So the fix is to set an environment variable Ollama key to something, literally anything. The guide suggests just using the string ollama-local,
A dummy key.
a dummy key, or you can write it into the config using Clawdbot config set.
And once you do that,
Then, magically, Clawdbot models list will actually show your local models. Without that dummy key, they just remain invisible.
that is a classic gotcha.
Okay, so now Clawdbot can see Ollama. Are we done?
Not quite. Just because it can see it doesn't mean it will use it. The guide warns about making it Ollama first.
Why? What does it default to? Depending on your setup, it might look for a cloud provider like OpenAI or Anthropic, if you have those keys set. You do not want to accidentally send 1,000 requests to a paid API when you thought you were running locally.
Ouch. Yeah, that'll be an expensive mistake. Why is my credit card bill $500?
Exactly. So you edit the config file, usually talkbot, clawdbot.json-, and set the default primary model to ollama 4.7 Flash.
And this is critical.
You have to restart the gateway. Clawdbot gateway restart.
Right. Config changes don't apply by magic.
You have to cycle the process. This is the moment, the guide says, where it truly becomes a local first assistant.
I like that. Local first. So we should be ready to roll. Time for the smoke test.
Time to see if it lives. The command is Clawdbot agent main message. Hello. Whatever you want to ask it.
And success is simply getting a reply.
Simple as that.
But what if we get silence? Or an error?
The guide offers a quick triage. First, check gateway health. Second, check if Ollama is reachable. Is the Ollama app actually running? And third, check your model name string. A common failure is pulling GLM 4.7 Flash, but configuring Clawdbot to look for Ollamax 4.
The names have to match exactly.
Exactly.
Also, hardware limitations.
Yes. If the local model is too heavy for your machine, it might just hang or time out. That's not a software bug, that's physics.
Yeah.
Your computer is thinking as hard as it can.
Fair enough.
Well,
So let's assume we're up and running. We have a local bot. We can talk to it in the CLI, but that's not really a personal assistant yet.
no.
I want this thing in my pocket. I want to text it while I'm at the grocery store.
This is where we get into connecting channels like WhatsApp, Telegram, or Discord. This is where you take it from a CLI tool to a contact in your phone. You run Clawdbot channels login.
But this immediately raises security alarms for me. If I hook us up to Telegram, can anyone just message my bot and start running commands on my server? Or can some random person say, delete my hard drive?
That is the big fear, isn't it? But the guide explains the pairing mental model.
How does that work?
Think of it like a bouncer at a club, but with a VIP list. The bot doesn't just talk to anyone. If an unknown sender, even if it's you on a new number, messages the bot, they don't get access, they get a code.
Like two-factor authentication?
Similar. The owner, you must explicitly go to your dashboard and approve that code to add that person to the allow list.
Oh, that's smart.
It prevents strangers from effectively getting a shell on your machine. You have to invite them in. Without that invitation, they are locked out.
I love that. It turns the bot into a fortress. Okay, finally, let's talk about where this should live long-term. The guide touches on security, cost control, and popular setups.
Right. You have a few architecture choices. You have the VPS route, always on, low cost, but you need to harden the security yourself.
Fair.
You have Docker, which offers great isolation and cleanliness, but adds more moving parts.
And WSL for the Windows crowd.
Right, for those wanting a Linux environment on Windows. But the guide emphasizes security hardening regardless of where you run it.
What are the key tips there?
Keep the gateway bound to the loopback interface localhost, unless you absolutely have to expose it. Don't let the bot autopilot expensive tasks. And rate limits are your friend.
And backups.
Treat your config like code. Back up the .clawdbot directory before you update.
Because updates break things.
Updates change things. And if you've customized your setup, you want a rollback plan. You don't want to lose your perfectly tuned assistant because of a software update.
Absolutely. Okay, we've covered the whole guide. It's a pretty comprehensive roadmap from zero to hero.
It takes you from a blank terminal to a functioning, secure local assistant that talks to your phone.
So let's summarize. If our listener is going to try this weekend, what are the golden rules we should take away from this?
There are three main takeaways the author hammers home. Number one, Node 22 Plus is non-negotiable. Don't fight it, just upgrade.
Number two.
The wizard is the setup. Run Clawdbot, onboard, install-daemon. That's what makes it stable and keeps it running when you close your laptop.
And number three.
Set that ollama key. It's the invisible switch that makes the whole thing work.
Simple enough. You know, what I find most exciting about this is that it demystifies the whole AI assistant thing. It's not magic. It's just a gateway, a dashboard, and a model server. And you can run it all yourself.
It's just the power dynamic. You aren't just a user anymore. You're the operator. You own the brain.
So here is our call to action for you, the listener. If you've got a spare afternoon, try this out. Set up Clawdbot. Send a message through a channel. And then, and I love this suggestion from the guide, pick one real boring chore to offload to your new assistant.
Maybe it's triaging emails. Maybe it's drafting a repetitive report. Just one thing to prove the utility.
Exactly. And remember, if you hit a wall, it's usually just one missing knob, a port, a token, or that funny API key.
The system is solid. You just have to configure it correctly.
Before we go, I want to leave you with a thought. We talked about connecting this to Telegram or WhatsApp. Once you have a local LLM that can read your messages and execute code on your machine, what happens when you start giving it access to your calendar or your smart home or your bank API?
That is where the pairing mental model becomes not just a security feature, but the gatekeeper to your entire digital life.
Something to mull over as you watch those terminal logs scroll by. That's it for this exploration of the Clawdbot guide. Thanks for listening.
Happy coding.